will not see any story whatsoever in the story which is being shared and reported by major news media around the world. Number one, the incident happened in February 28. Why the news is going viral now after 5 weeks, that itself is a question. Number two, if you have met His Holiness Dalai Lama, having worked with him for 10 years, I've been with him in many public events. He is one playful person. For example, if there is an Indian security person with a beard, he will pull his beard. If you have a mustache, he will play with your mustache. Sometimes, he will pull his mustache down, I'm sure that person has spent many minutes, keeping it up. He pulls it down. And if you have a big head, he'll point your head and say, big head, So if you have a big nose, he will say, big nose, and he goes close and gives the New Zealand Maori greeting, of touching each other's nose. So he's like that all the time playing. And if you are bald, that's it. He'll rub your head and give you one spank. Sometimes quite hard. My security, Kalyan, used to get quite a few spank on his head because, he was bald. Now, imagine His Holiness Dalai Lama going to the White House, meeting the President of America. This can't be, as serious and formal meeting as possible. He meets President Barack Obama. What does he do? His Holiness says to Obama, oh, you have big ear. He starts playing with his ear. And what does Obama say? Oh, you notice, So in that very serious, highest level of meeting, His Holiness plays with people. Another story. His Holiness was giving a lecture at Harvard University Sanders Theater, and he had to go through this basement tunnel, and where there was also an office. So we had cleared the tunnel. So as His Holiness was coming out, one lady from the office came out with the files, and she was busy moving forward. His Holiness ran and gave one slap, from the back to the lady. She turned around and looking, thinking, who the hell hit me, And His Holiness looked at her, smiled, and she also smiled. They both laughed and they hugged. They started walking. What did His Holiness tell this lady? He said, fat, fat, fat. Because this lady was, on, heavier side. She laughed, he laughed, they hugged, they walked towards the stairs, and he said goodbye to her, and she said goodbye to him. And she shared the story that His Holiness hit her, and he called her fat. Why the lady was not offended? Because His Holiness is sincere. He has no ill intention. He was very pure in his motivation. For example, myself, I got elected in 2011. In front of thousands of people, I think 50,000 people, His Holiness was giving a speech. At the end, he introduced me. He said, oh, now we have a new leader. He's from Harvard and modern educated and all that. I was getting, quite proud. Then he said, his Tibetan is, of a school standard. Can you imagine? I'm supposed to be a Tibetan leader, supposed to have oratory skills and Tibetan language. And then His Holiness just said, his standard of Tibetan is of a school kid. Everybody laughed, I was embarrassed, right? But what did I do? Did I feel anything bad towards His Holiness? No. Why? Because he's pure, he's sincere, he has no ill intention at all. I laughed with him. I was embarrassed. I wish he would be a little more politically correct with me in front of these people. But no, that's His Holiness for us, right? So people should understand that if you watch the video with the boy, Tibetans will say, that boy is so lucky. He got a hug from His Holiness, and he also got a kiss, right? But then from Western or others' perspective, I can understand it was politically incorrect. Then His Holiness office issued a statement, said sorry to the boy and the family, anyone who was offended. Now that's the end of the story. We should move forward, right? But then, this rapper, musician, Cardi B, and saying, oh, the people in power abuse their power. We should protect our children. And she shares the story about His Holiness and the boy. I mean, come on, give a break. Let me share with you a story that no one knows this. Maybe barely 10 people know about this. During COVID, right? America was number one in infection and death. India was number 2. That's where His Holiness Dalai Lama lived, right? So I was going to Washington, D.C., and his personal physician, Dr. Sithanla, called me and said, hey, you know, when you go to D.C., America is about to launch, Pfizer vaccine. If you could get some vaccine for His Holiness, because His Holiness is 85 now, entering 86 years old at that time. All the people who died, majority of them were elders. And His Holiness Dalai Lama was vulnerable, given his age, right? So I came to Washington, D.C. This is in November of 2020, right? And I met people at the White House, the Deputy National Security Advisors and others, and I made a request. And I said, His Holiness is very, he's given his age, we need to vaccinate him and protect from COVID. And White House agreed. And then message was conveyed to the US Embassy in Delhi. They also agreed, right? And then the vaccine was supposed to be taken to Dharamsala. Now the personal physician of His Holiness and the personal secretary approached His Holiness. You know what His Holiness said? He said, oh, please thank the government of America, but I don't want Pfizer vaccine. Because 1.4 billion people in India, they don't have vaccine. And I see people here, ordinary people, they are not getting vaccine also, right? I will wait till they get vaccinated, then only I'll get vaccinated. So, he refused a vaccine from America. That's His Holiness Dalai Lama, right? Now, we waited for a few months, right? And then finally, the vaccine was introduced in India, and AstraZeneca, which is 67% effective. And then again, the personal physician called me and asked me whether the government of India could facilitate that he be vaccinated at his residence. And I made the request to the Health Secretary in Delhi, Health Minister of Himachal and Health Secretary, and they all agreed, right? And the CMO, or the Chief Medical Officer of Dharamsala, was informed. And then, next day, the personal physician went to His Holiness and said, Your Holiness, the COVID vaccine will be given to you at your residence, right? What did His Holiness say? His Holiness said, why should I get a special treatment? I should go down to the hospital where all the people get their vaccine. So he went to the local hospital, like ordinary Tibetans and Indians, and got vaccinated, right? So that's His Holiness. He never used his personal popularity in influence. Far less than that. Even vaccine was offered by America. Even when he was offered to get vaccinated at his residence, he said, no, I will go down to the local hospital. So Tibetans know about it, right? Buddhists know about it. All the people around His Holiness know about it, that he is sincere. He is for us the Buddha of compassion, right? So I hope people around the world will understand through the stories, because of my personal experience, right? And put it in proper context whenever you talk about His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Lastly, major media have covered these story, and then it's time to move on. But also, you are showing concern about children, which is fair. What about 1 million Tibetan children who are forcibly removed from their homes in nomadic families, farming families in Tibet? And they are forced to study in boarding school in urban areas where they are taught in Chinese language. Everything Chinese is taught. They are made into Chinese. Even the UN human rights experts have reported on this. But all these major media who covered this incident of His Holiness Dalai Lama did not report about this 1 million Tibetan children. I hope you all will report about serious and real issues in Tibet. So with that, I want to say thank you to everyone.